Welcome, Australia. It's that time again for another podcast from the Mate team, where we try and get into your head with stuff that makes us sound smart. Sit back and relax. It's time for us to be mates. Welcome, Australia, to another Let's Be Mates podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Faz. In the room with me, we've got Bosco. Bosco, how are you doing today?
Good, mate. Good.
Good. And unfortunately, we don't have Dom here with us today. He's taken some leave and taken some well-earned rest away from this business, this crazy business, which is good. And hopefully he comes back refreshed. And just want to say on the record, Dom, we're not missing you here, mate. In today's episode, we are talking to Glen Rolls. Glen represents LaLiga in Australia and New Zealand. LaLiga is the football league in Spain that hosts the clubs of the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona, which most people will know, even if you're not a football fan. At Mate, we have chosen sport and in particular football to align our brand to, as we want passionate fans as our customers, and football has some of the passionate fans in the world. LaLiga is the pinnacle showcase around the world of football lovers. With the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona playing in the LaLiga, the power of its brands and presence globally is growing day by day. Some of the brand statements around LaLiga are, it's not football, it's LaLiga, and that LaLiga is more than just football. At Mate, we really resonate with this as we see ourselves first as a customer happiness business, then we sell telco products, which is core to our business. We truly believe a business needs to have more substance than just the service they sell, and this is why the LaLiga story is a must for everyone to hear. Glen, welcome to the Let's Be Mates podcast. Thanks for being on board.
Nah, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure being here talking to you guys, so thanks.
Oh, awesome. And, you know, football is, as you know, is real heart of our passion of our business. And, you know, what represents more football more than La Liga, right? And so it's probably one of the biggest things that's happening in world sport at the moment. And Glen, let's start with, and especially for our listeners, tell us a bit about you and what your role is at La Liga, and maybe a bit about your history and how it got you to La Liga.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess my history is pretty, history into football is probably not the traditional sort of way that a lot of people go through. I guess touching on my role first and foremost, you know, I'm what they call a delegate representative for La Liga. So I essentially represent all of La Liga's interests here in Australia as well as New Zealand, both countries. It's a very broad role because my day-to-day is very different, you know. I'm essentially kind of like the link person between local football here in this region and all of our departments back in Spain. So departments being communications department, commercial, of course, sports projects. So looking for maybe bringing coaches over and, you know, player development programs and that kind of thing, as well as our digital department. And that's just to name a few. So it's a very broad role tackling a number of things, really. I guess we'll talk about that more along the line. But I guess my personal story as well, as you can tell from my accent, I grew up in New Zealand. So
we won't hold it against you.
My path into football was probably not one of the most traditional ways. You know, I'm not from an English family. I'm not from what people would probably say an ethnic family here in Australia. So I grew up playing rugby union in New Zealand. I mean, I grew up wanting to be an All Black.
As most people would.
As is the norm for all New Zealanders. Of course, I played a bit of, like all Kiwi kids as well, you play every sport. You play rugby, you play football, you play cricket, just whatever you can do with your friends, right? And you basically go to school to eat your lunch and play sport. You don't really go for the education. But it's important later on in life, of course. So I played a bit of football, you could say socially and with friends growing up, never really on a competitive level. And finishing uni, I got a chance to go over to Spain to actually play union, to play a bit of professional sport over there. So, so I jumped at that chance. But I guess before that, so this is a story, like my personal story, why I'm so passionate about football. When I was about 15, I went to South America for a school trip. And I think it was in 2002, 2003. But anyway, the final of the Copa Libertadores at that time was Boca Junior versus Santos, and we were just in a small town just out of Buenos Aires, and Boca Junior won the final of that competition for the first time, and I can't remember how many years. But that was sort of my taste of just seeing exactly firsthand what football culture and football fans, was like, right? And that was you couldn't have been in a more perfect place for your first taste of it.
Absolutely.
It was outstanding. And I remember when they won, we sort of went for a bit of a walk on the street and absolute scenes from the fans there. And I thought, man, this is incredible. And from there, I always had a bit of an inkling. I wanted to learn more and be more involved in football, just purely because of the passion. I really, really believe that football is what sets it apart from the other sports is the passion aspect. And we're not just talking in one part of the world, one region. It really is global. And so going back to what I was saying before, I had the chance to go over to Spain, and this was about 11 years ago. Initially, I was only supposed to go for 6 months. Same old story. You sort of fall in love with the place, fall in love with the girls, the women, whatever.
It's a fairy tale.
Special one. You settle down, and I was there for 10 years. So, and then during that time, I got involved with football, being involved with a number of clubs, and also studied a master's degree over there at the Real Madrid graduate school. So met a lot of key people, and then of course got involved with LaLiga, who of course in recent times have had a great push or a great need to push their brand internationally, and of course they've expanded this project, this global network project that I'm very fortunate to form a part of, and of course that sort of led me into this role.
Oh, that's awesome. And you say so many things that we really resonate with, right? I mean, telco is definitely our skill, but football's our passion, right? And so we're very jealous that you're living your passion, which we love, right? And I love how you talk about passion, right? Because part of our brand, I guess, values is that we want, or brand statement is that we want passionate fans of something to be our customer, right? And you talk about the Boca Juniors experience, and what more passionate fans in the world are football fans, right? And so I know that we've got a bias on because we are football fans, but take our hat off for a bit. And when we talk about our brand values and what we're trying to achieve, we need something to represent that sort of feeling, right? And football does that in all corners of the world. And I know in Australia, football's not massive, but if you see how the likes of the supporters around the RBB with the Western Sydney Wanderers and how they launch, I was at the airport at midnight when they came back from the Asian Champions League and won the Asian Champions League. There were over 5,000 people in the airport. That's stuff you don't see in this country, and that's stuff you don't see with other sports. And so it's really important. I think it stays true to our brand, right? And so passion and passionate fans of something is core, and I guess that's what drives LaLiga, right? If you haven't got passionate fans, you haven't got anybody doing anything, right? So
100%. Yeah, I think that being in Spain firsthand and I guess experiencing the different stories of all the clubs and all the different stories, and as you say, just seeing the passion firsthand in the stadiums, around the stadiums, just on the street as well. I mean, I always say to people, like, you asked me if I spoke Spanish. Well, eventually I learned Spanish, but the first thing I learned was to speak football, and speak Spanish football, because you'd go into a bar, and if you didn't know how to converse with the locals there, if your knowledge wasn't sort of at a minimum point that you needed to sort of have a good conversation, you probably wouldn't enjoy yourself. So that was probably the first language that I learned to speak over in Spain was to speak Spanish football. Before actually, and of course the swear words probably the second thing that I learned. And then of course you learn how to speak the language, but it's all mixed together. And as you say, passion's very much at the center point.
Yeah, and I had the chance to go to Madrid a couple of months ago before all the craziness, as you know, Glenn. And I guess we didn't spot it. Myself and a colleague from work that came with me, obviously didn't speak the language, but when we went to a local bar, we had three things in common: football, and the food and beer. Simple as that. All the prosciutto. I think, what do you call those bars where you Well, you come on, Bars. Yeah, come on. And so that's definitely what we had in common. So no matter if we didn't speak the language, we had three things in common as soon as we walked through the door, and it was awesome. It was so cool. But sorry, Ross. Yeah.
Yeah. So Glenn, summarise COVID for us for LaLiga. Obviously, COVID's had a massive effect on all sports globally, but
and businesses and people. Yeah.
So just give us a bit of summary of what it meant for LaLiga. Obviously, the league stopped for a little while. It's back underway now, I believe. But just give us a bit of an overview of what happened and how things changed during COVID.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it seems like a long time ago now, right? Like looking at when was it sort of start to mid-March when everything kind of hit the fan. Yeah. I guess initially in Spain, it was no different to, as you said, Mark, any other business, any other sector as a part of the broader society, and the fact that everyone was very uncertain of the times, and especially right at the start. No one knew exactly how it was going to affect everything. And of course, from there, how it was going to, I guess, evolve into the situation that it turned out to be. So, yeah, that being said, I think initially it was very tough. First of all, I wasn't in Spain, so I can't really comment in terms of the specifics there. But from what I believe, I think initially it wasn't taken as probably, not that it wasn't taken as serious, it just didn't seem like it was going to end up where it got to. So that was, I think that was the initial sort of phase. And then, of course, it hit all of a sudden in Spain. Of course, Spain being one of the most affected countries at that time in the world, up with Italy. And it just sort of went almost overnight from something that could potentially happen to all of a sudden, 100% lockdown, so many different infected and affected people, as well as, people dying. So it was just a completely, a travesty, very sad, affecting people's lives. So I think, initially for us, football was kind of put to the side, right? Yeah. It was like, this is a sport, this is obviously important, but in the scheme of things, it's not the most important. And of course, people following the rules, following the precautions, keeping safe, keeping healthy was, the first and foremost, most important thing, not only in Spain, but the rest of the world. So I think as a sporting organization, as I said, the sport was kind of put to the side, and we sort of just saw ourselves as maybe one of the leading organizations that could help with the communication and the messaging from, I guess, the government and these health authorities in Spain to use our platforms and, of course, use our communication tools to help deliver their messages. Not really our messages. Our messages, as I said, were put to the side, and those key sort of health messages were implemented. So I think that first and foremost, that was the very, very important for everyone. I guess moving on, probably, I don't know, a few weeks sort of passed, maybe a few months it was, people sort of, thought that, Spain could get back to some sort of normality after going through what it went through. And then, of course, during that time, LaLiga was, I guess, devising plans on the information that we had. So again, this wasn't specific and precise information. This was just information based on, I guess, scenario analysis of what could happen in the future. So, yeah, hats off to the people back in Madrid, because they worked really tirelessly to devise these plans with the limited amount of information that they had, right? So the plan was always to bring La Liga back once we could bring it back safely. Of course, that wasn't our decision to make. That was of course the higher powers, the Spanish government, the Spanish health authorities, all making those decisions. And of course, once they sort of devised their own plan, I remember it was maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago, of how to get back, to some sort of normality. I think they devised their own sort of 4-stage plan. So every 2 weeks, Spain was going to come out of a different level of lockdown. And of course, I guess to the stage that Spain is in now, where it's basically you can sort of go about your life normally, but you have to wear a mask, you have to keep yourself socially distanced, et cetera, et cetera. So on the back of that announcement, we were able to devise our own 4-stage plan of course, firstly get the players and the teams back to training, to some sort of training, because it's not the same. You can have a treadmill, or some of these, big footballers have their own gyms, but I mean, if it's not on the pitch and you're not having that match kind of training fitness, it's not the same, right? So, so that was the first step, and probably the most important, because that sort of, got them out of their houses onto the training pitch. So that was number one. And then I guess the fourth phase of that was obviously just before the matches restarted, and it was, of course, bringing group training back and the team training back to back to normal, essentially. So there's been many different stages and plans put in place. As I said, many different people working on these things, many cogs in motion as well. So even now, like there's matches back playing, but LaLiga essentially is the logistical organizer of everything. So we even organize every club and every team's travel arrangements now, just so that there's one central, I guess, organization that's controlling everything to ensure that everything, is following all the rules and all the regulations to a T, which is that important. And I guess, so that's sort of, on the pitch and speaking about sort of what hit initially as well. And I guess off the pitch, you could say when there was no content, no matches being played, I mean, we could only do as much as we could do. Like we still sort of saw ourselves, we had a massive responsibility to not only keep engaging with our fans, but also to play some sort of part in the COVID-19, I guess, situation. So a number of different initiatives were created. In Spain, there was a concert created, I think it was called the LaLiga Fest, or LaLiga Santander Fest, and that sort of saw the best sort of musical artists from Spain and Latin America, so all the reggaeton and all these like massive names get together with all of the players, and they put on like a concert, and that was they raised a lot of money, I think a few million euros. There's been a number of esports initiatives to of course engage with that audience as well, with some of the players. And of course, the clubs have played a huge role as well, right, with different initiatives in their own regions, and of course, some of the bigger clubs as well, global initiatives, which have also raised money and helped with awareness and to again deliver those messages. So yeah, it's been in some ways we've been more busier during this time than outside of this time, because there's just been so many things in motion and so many things that have had to be put in place, perfectly and very precisely. So yeah, there hasn't really been any rest for the wicked, so to speak.
Oh, mate, it's a great story, because what I think people don't mention in these COVID times is the ability of people to adapt and bring what they love to the audience in a different way, right? Pardon me, and I don't think we talk about that enough. I mean, obviously your product is football, and you didn't have football to go and show the world, so you need to adapt, and you built other things around that to keep your fans, focused and watching things during the time that they're suffering, right? And I think that's very important. That's an obligation your brand has, because something that you deliver they love is got taken away, and now you've delivered them something in a different way. And I think those are some of the successes that we should talk about more than anything. And look, in my world, football drives hope as well. And in Europe, it's a religion, right? Our background is Italian, and it's part of our religion, just like us being Christian is part of our religion, right? Loving football. And I think even though people had to learn a new way of working and all those different things, but football being back is obviously inspiring people and getting people's hopes up, especially in Europe now, where it's in the middle of summer, where they should be celebrating and out there, right? And I know there's rules and regulations, but football being on, I know you can't be there, but football being on is something they can do together. They can share time together in their homes. They can have a drink and they can celebrate. And I think that's the real importance of it being back, in my opinion. And so it's great having LaLiga back. And I know I've been up late in the last couple of weeks watching a lot of LaLiga, and which has been great. But and so what can we see happening towards the end of the season? So I know if you want to talk about the rest of this season, so we know it's going to finish. When exactly is it finishing? What's sort of the makeup of it?
So yeah, I mean, we're in the middle now. Well, it started this morning, of the fourth to last round. So there's only this round and 3 more to go. La Liga started back, I believe it was the 12th of June, and it will finish around the week of the 20th of July. So essentially, the plan was to play the remainder of the games, which was 110 games, in the space of 39 days, which is, that basically meant that there was going to be football every day for the rest of the season, which for the fan is amazing.
Yeah,
As you
exactly.
say, like, you've been staying up late. I've been getting up every morning at 6 o'clock on the dot. I'm not usually an early riser, and that's probably not early for a lot of people here in Australia, but for someone that lived in Spain for 10 years, that's extremely early. I can tell you that much. So I've been getting up. It's been really nice every morning on the dot. 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a La Liga match. And of course, this morning who was it? Atletico Celta, and that was a 1-1 draw. But so that was the plan, and it was very, as you can imagine, there's just so much football. For the fan, it's great, but of course for the clubs and for La Liga itself, just so many different things to organise, and of course so many different stakeholders to engage with and to have them on board. Of course, we had to speak to the players. We speaking to the federation over in Spain and whatnot. Some players playing 3 games in the space of 7 days. So yeah, that's not the norm. But as you say, like, we've had to adapt a lot of things, and as you say, getting football back to not only Spanish society, but to the globe as well, to the global fans of La Liga clubs, was just very, very important. And of course, speaking about the 3-stage plan that I was speaking about before, of course, this plan doesn't really stop until fans can come back to the stadium. That essentially is where it needs to get back to. And of course, when that happens, we don't really know, but that's just such an important, I guess, final step in the scheme of everything, is getting these fans, these people that love the football so much, getting them back, enjoying their clubs and cheering on their clubs in that central zone of a stadium. So that'll be the last sort of thing. But so as you say, there's what, probably 2 weeks left of this season, 3.5 rounds left, and it's just flown by, right? Like, it's just flown by like that. And of course, once it finishes, well, we're already almost planning for next season, because next season is scheduled to begin mid-September. So the break between the seasons is nothing as well. And of course, you've got the Champions League in the middle of that. So,
of course, yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of ludicrous in the fact that there hasn't really been a large break or anything, or there's not going to be a large break. But as you say, we've just had to adapt. Everyone's had to adapt. All the stakeholders, not only La Liga, the clubs, the players, the federations, everyone involved. But everyone's done a fantastic job coming together to be able to deliver this, right? So it's really good.
Javier Tebas, you can probably say it better than me. I've probably said it wrong, but he...
Boss man.
The boss man, the head of La Liga, he mentioned at the World Football Summit this week that they're looking at getting to at least 30% with football fans in stadiums, hopefully for the beginning of next season. I mean, I think it's looking like that. I think that's a real possibility, right? And I think if that all goes well, then hopefully it can increase. But I mean, in your view, what does that mean for the fans? I mean, I know being an A-League supporter in Australia, being at a game is important, but for somewhere like Spain, it's next level, right? I think the fans there would,
I think the stadium and the fans at the stadium that attend the games are your core fans, are any club's core fans, right? Yeah. Of course, La Liga and our clubs, we have international fans who are just as important, essentially, because as you said, like, these are people in Australia that are getting up at ridiculous hours to watch their teams and their football matches, as well as spending money, their hard-earned cash on merchandise and football jerseys and these types of things, right? So all the fans in that way are just as important as each other. But you're right. I mean, getting fans back into the stadium is just such an essential part of football, and it's looking like, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what sort of way you look at it, it's going to be a gradual move into I guess, having stadiums at full capacity. It's not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight, So yeah, it's looking, I mean, Javier Tebas mentioned that, of course, again, like La Liga, we're of course working with the authorities and whatnot, but we won't be in charge of making those decisions.
Of course, yeah.
That'll come from, as I said before, authorities, health authorities, Spanish government, etc. So we can only work as closely as we can work with them to of course receive that information and whatnot. And then it's looking like, yes, it'll be a gradual move, as I said before, into maybe getting stadiums back to full capacity. And I'm sure once those stadiums come back to full capacity, I'm sure, the numbers will be bigger than they've ever been before, no doubt, because the demand is there. People want to get back and really support their teams and their players.
100%.
So, Glenn, one of the brand statements of La Liga is that La Liga is more than just football. So give us a bit of a view of what that means from your perspective or from the organisation's perspective exactly.
Sure. So, yeah, I think you're referring to the motto, it's not football, it's La Liga, which is, a statement that we came up with maybe 2 years ago. And you're right, it's kind of almost like a slogan, motto statement for the whole organisation. You could say that, yes, La Liga is a football, at the core of its sort of being, it is a football competition. But, yeah, we tend to believe that it's much more than that. And, we're speaking about passion before. What we kind of go on is that, yes, it's a football competition played on a football pitch. But, of course, La Liga is not only that. It's the culture, it's the players, it's the clubs, it's the cities, it's the fans, it's everything, right? So how can you bundle that all together to create, storytelling sort of ways to tell those stories of all of those factors, which is, it seems very, very difficult because there's just so many things to tell, and there's so many different stories to tell of these certain factors of what La Liga represents. I guess in our case, especially what we tend to think that sets La Liga apart from other competitions is that, it's very, very rich in culture. And as you said before, you went into a bar. What did you have in common? You had football, you had food, and you had drink. And in Spain, you go to any different region, and you have that in abundance. It's very diverse as well in culture. So people don't I think fully understand just how diverse Spain is as a country. I certainly didn't. When I moved to Spain in 2008, I thought I was going to like a Benidorm sort of place where it was going to be just beach, sand, and 30, 35 degrees the whole year round. I ended up going to a city called Valladolid, or Valladolid, as they say in Spain, in, I think, end of November. So that was sort of towards the winter months, -7 degrees. And I was trying to, go around, walking around the street with no shoes on and jandals or thongs. So, yeah, the diversity, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is just huge in Spain. So that comes back to football, to culture, to language, and of course, different ways of playing. So all these types of factors, play a huge role. And I think as an organization as well, just to touch on very briefly, we tend to look at other things that aren't football specific as well. So we have a business school that looks at different things to help the football industry, not only the football industry, but to help grow the sports industry as a whole as well. We actually sponsor other sports that aren't football in Spain. So not only the sports federations that are in Spain, but also the high performance professional athletes in Spain that go to the Olympic Games. I believe a percentage of the money that we earn goes to help pay for their social security and ensure that they have something to fall back on for when they retire, which wasn't the case in Spain. So many different things, looking at different social responsibility projects, going into regions not only in Spain but across the world, in different sort of maybe countries where they have a lot of refugees and those sort of countries, using football as a tool to help with social problems and social issues that different countries are faced. Because I think, football, and you could probably say sport in general, has the power to not only bring people together, but it's also a tool to help not be the solution, but certainly help drive the solution to solve a lot of issues that different countries are faced with. So yeah, I mean, I could be talking for a long time about we chose that motto, but I mean, it really is much more than football. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you make a very valid point. But if you look at some of the challenges we've got in the world today, that I mean, in Australia there's been the fires, there's been COVID, but obviously there's been challenges around, you know, racism in America and things like that. But one thing that football doesn't, I guess, it doesn't cause prejudice against or anything like that is everybody loves it. No matter who you are, where you come from, what you do, it's a game that everybody loves, and that's what I love about it. It brings people together. You know, when you're in the stands and your team scores and you're hugging somebody, you don't care who's next to you because they're supporting your team, and that's what it brings more than just the play on the pitch, in my opinion, right? And so, and that's what I love about it. You know, all our family, our nieces and nephews, our kids, everything. We go to the Western Sydney Wanderers games. It's a time to get together and spend that quality time together. And if our team wins, great. If they have, but if not, it's more about the quality of time that product brought us together, right? Which is so cool. And I know you get that as well. And you know, one thing I want to talk about as well quickly is that, you know, we believe influencers and personalities are big in supporting brands, right? And that to us, it builds authenticity, it builds a connection that a word or a thing can't, right? And, you know, I love to understand your view on the importance of influencers in La Liga. Like, I mean, the likes of Messi, all right, the likes of Zidane coaching Real Madrid and things like that. They're obviously big draw cards and inspirations to people to come and support La Liga. How do you see it, those type of people?
Yeah, I guess the word influencer is a tough one to define, right?
Yeah, agreed.
It is a very broad term. I mean, people often talk about social influencers and social media
yeah.
kind of thing. But as you said, like, influencer is basically anyone that has influence over something else, right? That's sending key messages to influence someone. So from our point of view, you're right. Like, La Liga has been lucky in the fact that, I guess, for the last 10 to 15 years, you know, a lot of the, especially, you know, success in European football has been within La Liga, within our clubs, and of course within our players. I mean, you just have to look at and again, I'm not trying to brag or anything about this, but you just have to look at the results of the European competitions.
Absolutely.
And just see, you know, not only Real Madrid and Barcelona, but the likes of Atletico, and of course, you know, Athletic Club Bilbao, even Espanyol have made a few European finals in the past few years. Seville, of course, won 3 UEFA Cups in a row. So the success has been there. And of course, that, I think, helps attract the world's best players to these clubs. So you're right in saying that in terms of the players themselves, that's probably the biggest influencer that La Liga has, because I guess you just have to look at the football fan in today's world. Yes, you have the diehard football fans that love their club, and that, of course, you know, their parents have followed this club, and their parents followed a certain club. So it's sort of like a hand-me-down of you must support this club at all costs. But of course you have those fans, and of course you have other fans that follow players. So that being said, I think you know, having these big players in La Liga certainly helps drive those key messages. And of course, using their brand power and brand pull to bring in fans that, yes, may be already fans of La Liga, may not be fans of La Liga, but fans of football. But of course, they follow, you know, a La Liga match because of these players. Or thirdly, they may not be fans of football at all or sport, but they just follow someone on social media or something. And of course, you know, that helps at the end of the day bring so many different types of fans closer to La Liga. So, yeah, that being said, you know, you've got, you know, Messi, of course. Ronaldo was playing in La Liga in his prime for 8-9 years. They were, you know, of course, without question, the two biggest names in world sport probably at the moment. And then, of course, in recent times as well, we've set up our own ambassador program. So you know, as you can imagine, La Liga doesn't have any assets which are players, current players, because they essentially belong to the clubs that contract them. So we can't essentially use the individual rights of these players, but collectively we can. But apart from that, we have this ambassador program. So former players, Iker Casillas, Iniesta, Puyol, Luis Garcia, like all these types of players that represented different clubs as well, and they're very knowledgeable about Spanish football and about football in general. So using their brands to help deliver key messages is certainly very important as well. And then, of course, going back to the social media influencers, we also do that from time to time for different campaigns as well. Here in Australia, we've got there's a couple of guys that are actually big La Liga fans. One loves his Real Madrid and the other loves his Barca. And they're probably like the two kind of social media football influencer guys of Australia. So we do try to localize the story as much as possible as well, using these sort of local people that are La Liga fans to again help deliver those messages and also localize the content as much as possible, again, just to get at the core of the fans in every certain region that we're at.
Yeah, I love all that, and I love how La Liga does a lot of the different things, and we've been speaking about sub brands and stuff like that for different products, and El Clasico is another brand that to in the world of football, if you're a football fan, is something that's known on its own, right? The El Clasico event is something on its own worldwide, right? And the great thing is that World Cups and things and Olympics might happen every 4 years, but the El Clasico pretty much happens, it depends on how the season and the draw goes, happens a couple times a year, and it's like the biggest. Literally, the time it's on, it's the biggest game in the world by far, right? It's fantastic.
Glenn, so tell us a little bit more, just to close off, about the goal of La Liga, particularly in the Australian market. So obviously you mentioned at first a few things that you're involved in day to day, but what's the ultimate goal of La Liga in Australia?
I think I'd start by saying the local goals here are very much aligned with our global goals, right? So there's three major goals that La Liga has. You could probably say on an international level. So I didn't really mention it before, but I guess the history of La Liga and sort of how it developed. But if you went back to, and I'll just give a very, very brief history lesson about La Liga. If you go back to sort of when, or even before Tebas was involved in La Liga, 2014, 2015, La Liga was, an organization that had around 40, 45 employees that was basically in charge of putting football games on the pitch and really didn't look at anything else. Something that was very key happened in 2015, which was basically a law changed in Spain, giving La Liga as an organization to commercialize and negotiate the TV rights on behalf of the whole competition. So that's the first division and the second division. And on the back of that, La Liga just exploded because, of course, we were able to package the content, the matches, the seasons in a package that was more attractive for not only broadcasters nationally, but of course internationally. And on the back of that, many different things happened. This international department was sort of born out of that, of course, which I form a part of. So that being said, I guess the goals here really, as I said before, fall in line with the global goals, which is to build the value of the La Liga brand in each of the markets. So here in Australia, it's no different. It's also to increase the TV rights, the value of the TV rights, which is basically sort of in alignment with the La Liga brand. If you essentially have a stronger brand in a certain market, that's going to attract more fans, etc. And of course, that's going to increase the product, right? The TV rights deals that you will sign later on in the track. The second goal would probably be to increase audience numbers. So when I say audience numbers, of course, I'm talking about TV audience numbers, people that actually engage and watch La Liga on TV and OTT platforms. So of course, we have beIN Sports here in Australia as our broadcaster, but also audience numbers on our digital and social platforms. So I think that's been a key factor in helping La Liga grow internationally is of course digital, right? It's digital and social media. I think maybe it was 2 or 3 months ago when we celebrated, I think now we've got more than 100 million followers on all of our social media channels alone. So that's just phenomenal. An incredible amount of people following La Liga and people that are engaging with your brand. And of course that helps to target a certain audience that maybe are your future consumers as well.
Absolutely.
So it's just it's such an important factor there. So of course increasing both of those audience numbers and those metrics there. And probably thirdly, the main thing is to generate opportunities, not only for La Liga, but for our clubs. So when I say opportunities, I mean, these could be commercial opportunities, they could be strategical opportunities, or they could just be a simple opportunity for a club to implement its brand in a certain region. So it could be through a sports project, whether that's, a clinics or certain, looking at junior development or looking at coaching courses or whatnot. So they're essentially the three main goals that we have in each market. And I think if you sort of delved more specifically to Australia and probably, played off those three principal goals, you could probably go and specify them even more and say, okay, on a comms point of view, we want to get as close as we can to the local press and the local journalists. So we put on a number of different press events with the local press, local football and sports press here in Australia, when we can physically, of course, before the season starts. We did before this season, we had it at a Spanish tapas bar, and we told different stories about our clubs, about the matches, the derby matches, which are very important, touching on not only football, but of course, the cultural element as well. A few weeks ago, we had a Zoom call with Luis Garcia. So we brought, again, the journalists closer there. Another example was last season, we took Johnny Aloisi over to Spain and we toured the towns where he played. So in Vitoria, where he played for Alaves, and of course in Pamplona, where he played for Osasuna. And again, that was just a beautiful thing to do, because I think people here don't realize just how big their football stars are. Absolutely. Because for whatever reason, football on a commercial level doesn't get the same mainstream media attention as other sports. But that was a huge hit, because people saw, especially in Pamplona, where he was, a hero, a massive hero there. He couldn't go 2-3 meters down the street without someone recognizing him. And then, of course, outside the stadium where I was Osasuna playing in second division. Maybe they were playing like Albacete or someone. He was just mobbed. He was getting mobbed. Like he was like a Lionel Messi in Pamplona. Like it was ridiculous. So, and that was just another beautiful story to tell. Of course, looking at the digital goals here, again, it's using our digital platforms and social platforms to convert our global appeal and content that has a global appeal, but localize it as much as possible. And that could be, doing something as simple as getting one of our players or ambassadors to send a very localized, personalized message to Australia. It could be to help celebrate, Australia Day or whatever, right? Like it's just a bit of icing on the top of the cake. From a marketing point of view as well, we like to activate as much as we can in this market. You talked about, El Clasico before, around, our big brands, our derby matches and our Clasico matches, trying to use them as much as possible to bring people together again, fans and people that aren't fans of those clubs, maybe just to have a bit of experience or a bit of a taste of what it would be like to be at those stadiums over in Spain. So we set up different watch parties. Of course, the last Clasico just before COVID hit had a kickoff at 7 a.m. So we went to Melbourne together with BN Sports, and we set up a coffee drinking watch party at 7 a.m. at Fed Square. And people watching El Clasico on the huge screen in Fed Square, there would have been only maybe, 400 or 500 people. I think we set up a coffee cart giving out flat whites, and I think they gave out sort of 650 coffees to the punters. So that was something that we did, and that was fantastic. But also using other important matches potentially where there are supporters clubs. So something that we did on a smaller scale, again, to get closer to our fans, was a match between Espanyol and Eibar, who have, more than one official supporters club groups here in Australia. We got all of their fans together, and we just went to a bar here in Sydney and set up a mini watch party for those two groups of fans just to come together. So yes, rivals off the pitch, but of course friends. Of course, watching the games together, and there was about 150 people watching that match, right? And I think that the beautiful thing about La Liga is again, not to go on too much about it, but yes, you have all these well-known brands and well-known clubs and teams that people on a global level support, but you also have these stories And I always use the example of Eibar. So Eibar, they have 2 official supporters clubs here in Australia. Barcelona, for example, yes, they have people that follow them, but they don't have an official supporters club.
Yeah, you're right.
Eibar have 2. And people they fell in love with their story because it's a club that's from well, you can't even call it a city. It's a town in the north of Spain. I think it's around 23,000 people. They play in a stadium that's 7,000. I believe it's getting extended to 8,500.
Yeah.
So they're currently under construction there, and they have a different philosophy. They tell different stories. But how can a club from such a small town, how can they compete with the big boys? And they do it year in and year out. And it looks like they're going to be safe for another season. I mean, there's still 3 more rounds to play. But they've beaten Real Madrid. They've beaten Barcelona, I think, before. And yeah, how does this town do that, right? And that's the beautiful thing about football. I mean, yes, it's beautiful to follow the biggest players and biggest clubs, but it's also beautiful in the fact that these smaller, probably lesser known clubs from regional Spain, what's their story? How can they compete? What do they do that's different to the other people, right? And it's bringing it back really to its core, which is family, especially in the story, which is Eibar. It's very much a family club, and everything they do, they have family at the center of it. So yeah, it's very beautiful.
Yeah, well, we can really resonate with that as a business, right? Coming from a backyard, challenging the big guys in this market as well in the telco space, and so that story really resonates with us. And I know you've told me that a couple of times in the past, and I think it's such a beautiful story. But what it does prove is that football is the world game, and football is the beautiful game, and so it's awesome. But Glen, look, I won't keep you too long, but we really appreciate you coming on. There's been, it's been fantastic. I think. The key thing out of this is that it's not all about football. It's about what football enables, and I think that's the biggest thing. And I like to think that's what we think about our brand as well. It's not about telco. It's about what our business enables people to do, right? And I think, and that's why we feel like we really resonate and really align with what you guys do at LaLiga. But what we need to do is get you on again when the new season starts, and we'll talk about what's going on there, and maybe have a bit of a regular LaLiga session, moving forward. But look, Glen, thanks for your time. Really appreciate you having on, and mate, we'll have you on soon.
No worries, guys. Thank you for having me again, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Let's Be Mates podcast by the team at Mate.
Search for the Let's Be Mates podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and at letsbemates.com.au. Hit subscribe to get the latest episode each week.
For all your telco needs, choose a provider you can trust like a mate. Visit letsbemates.com.au, Google Mate, or call us on 13 14 13 to sign up today.
See you soon, mate.